This is sort of unscripted, although I'm all. You know what it means to be unscripted, right? Scripted, writing a script, writing your own life book. Um, Particularly in the mornings after I've disappeared for a while and then come back into my body here, right? In the morning, I realize I wake up and it's always a brand new day. You know, ever since I was a little kid. Hey, I'm ready to go. What do you want to go do? And you're on fire. And you're on fire. I was on fire to learn. And the reason you're on fire to learn is because there is so much to learn. And that means that the knowing goes on forever, knowing more about ourselves, of what's possible to experience that we've never experienced before because we didn't learn it yet. So you're increasing your fire, which is the speed of your tetrahedron, your magnets, right? Which, what happens is, and this is true, if you go look at the, right away the whole tree is just like huge. What branch, part of the library, the stories which represent the information, what you learn, what you know, over here versus over here, and it's just like, man, there ain't no way that there's enough energy that I can compress that down into one planet and run it as a torsion field movie player, connected to everybody's software so we can all play a different movie. Imagine that. Now all of a sudden you're experiencing a movie that you weren't experiencing before, and you're not going to know who it is that's running that movie. Okay? I know. So sometimes when I revisit, like researching, you're searching. What are you searching for? If you're searching for something, you're not creating anything, right? Okay. Remember how the bifurcation works between CQ and IQ? The creative quotient and then the intelligent quotient. And I shared with you what I experienced when I was a child, right? Because of how the programming works with males. And I'll give you a few examples, which are called artifacts that are used to program self-reinforce how the gender side is programmed that way with males, okay? And I'll give you an example of what was brought to my attention that thus was reinforcing that, but I was inverting it the other way, if you understand. In other words, something that's inverted, I convert it into something else, okay, that isn't what that is. That's like unprogramming that program, that API interface, based on the math and the language of what is represented by that. Because they have a way to be able to get people to become what they want you to become by virtue of not understanding how the presentation represents a magnetic recording, particularly in a time delay, and why a time matrix is even created for the reason in which it is, which has to do with learning. Now we're back to magnets, now we're back to mirrors, now we're back to speed. Right? So now you can understand the importance of the one. I'm the one. A monopole. A single mated chip. That is a high-speed torque converter. Right? So you want to protect the volcanic shield on a planet. Right? With 5 magnets. Well, all these operations are going on because one of the things that, what's her name, Asha Diane, and I try and do this about not throwing the baby out with the bathwater. So, for example, she could run an hour and 30-minute presentation and say, this comes from the Guardians. So what is she saying when she says that? This is not my material. I didn't invent this stuff. Okay, it came to me, I'm sharing it with you. What you decide to do with it is not up to me. I'm simply the informer, the messenger. Here is the message. Here is the information that's being shared with you. Because she also mentioned why it's being shared, when it's being shared, and who it is that is the receiver, see? So, for example, you could say, well, how many people actually viewed that video? of Ashadian with the Voyager material, particularly the one called Fall of Metatron. That's the one I revisited just a little while ago. Sometimes I catch things or don't realize the importance of some words that because you're moving so fast, you're processing just so much things that's happening on a multidimensional, multi-density level, right? That it's some things are more important than other things, and it's like connecting the dot and then all of a sudden stopping and realizing, haha, that's why I'm here. And it could be only one thing. It could be only 3 words, actually, because 3 words in one book could be tied to 1,000 other books that is related to the information from which we learn to what we know is true. What we know is true. All right, so now you're into the false positive side, and I used an example of how that works with a doctor in Medford, Oregon, right? When I had suffered a compression fracture in my lumbar spine, and this is, a lot of folks are not going to understand this, but I've tried to convey this, and that means that I have to be willing as the one to experience everything that everybody else experiences being done to them as a result of the trauma, because if I'm not who I say I am, then I can't recover from that. Right? Now, if you remember when I told you when I was growing up as a child, if it's true that I am what I say I am as the one, okay, then that means that I have to be willing to allow myself to believe. Now we get into belief systems. If I am who I say I really am, then it means that nothing can kill me. You're bulletproof. You're Superman and Supergirl is one, right? I don't test that for obvious reasons, because then you don't know the one. Then you don't know that you're the one. So I don't play games with my own mind, okay? Be that as it may, and I've said this before, I'm a musician, the first musician. That's the first wave. That's the crystal spiral. That's what Ashadian refers to the Kathara. Right? And why letters are actually put together the way in what they are, like Ra. The other words for Texas say Ra is the region of Saturn. Satan, Satan. What did you hear Patty Broussard say about Satan? That was the former sun, kicked to the curb. Why? Go to a higher frequency. That sounds like a good idea. Right? And then I remember that Patty also mentioned something of Eve. I've said some other things. I don't want to go off on that. I know, Mama. There are some things that I avoid, and it's only because it's like anything else. This is why when you get into qualifiers and givens, listen, I would have to qualify everything that I say, because you realize that information is connected to other information, another library. It's like Aaron runs his library. Then I got another girl upstairs that runs her library. And it's like we're all connected to all these libraries. So it's just like I don't get into the war game, which is a mind game, when we get over what we know, what we don't know, what's true, what's not true, because the information is so vast, it's ridiculous. Right? And that's what was happening as a child, where I come full circle on this in the beginning about programming males. I'll give you one example as an artifact, a Tonka truck. And now you see on the TV screen, which is a presentation of men driving around in Tonka trucks and the raping of the planet, setting up all the mines, everything that they harvest. So that's a machine. A truck is a machine, right? Runs on a machine, a motor, right? And burning up the consciousness of the planet in order to produce exhaust. You know, now we're back to hydrocarbons. Okay, so that becomes one. Then I can give you another one made by Mattel. Mattel is a toy maker, a submachine gun. Okay, you pulled it back. Brrr, that's a war machine. Okay, and then you're flooded almost every day with documentaries showing everything dealing with war, right? Sickness, disease, And so you're not experiencing a whole lot of folks through the mass media sharing how much they love you by virtue of what you experience through them. That is what love is. Now we're back to measuring what is love, what isn't what love is, right? So one of the things that, and a few other things, Army helmets, and then of course being thrown in a military academy at 5 years of age, right? And then all the comic books, all the magazines, like a 17 magazine. Oh, look at these girls with the mannequins and everything else. Isn't that cute? Okay, well, if you want to become a model, or in other words, you want to replicate that, or say, well, that's cool, I can do this. Well, now you get into how you can convert something from what was once there, the way it was being experienced that way. Now you can experience it a different way. So, for example, if I use just like, okay, this is pink. This is pink, right? Okay, so I'm an original artist, an original sound musician. That is a color. I have a pink rose diamond heart. Okay. Now, I can use this for whatever I want that it can be used for. Now, instead of painting my nails, I could use this to paint something on a door, a message. And I've done that, right? Okay, so what's the difference between this and a gallon of paint when you paint your house? Right? Just in a smaller jar, right? Okay, so now you begin to understand when I mentioned at 13 years of age, I was wanting to learn through girls everything that girls know how to do. Why? Because they're doing different things. Right? Yeah. So when I grew up, my mother was running a serger and a sewing machine. She used to knit. She knew she could make. She was a clothesman, seamstress. Okay, but that wasn't the only thing she knew how to do. Okay, so I realized that my mother was extremely talented, extremely creative, and that would be true of a girl that I provided a safe place for. Her name was Tootsie. Bless your heart, girl. She had a heart of gold, but her son was a demon that was feeding on her. Tried to kill me a couple of times. And so she was big into arts and crafts. Loved to work in the garden, loved to plant seeds. She was giving love to the flowers. They grew, they were healthy. Right? She had a spirit connection to Mama Earth. The earth, water, right? Earth, water, seed, growing. Grower. And so she grew up on a rock farm. You know, and when you think of poverty, we all can relate to this, right? Where they didn't have running water and they didn't have electricity. Okay, so now you can go back to maybe 10,000 years ago living as a paleo man. So if you have an intelligence relationship with a creator being, which is a powerful spirit, which is a goddess, and you're plugged into her battery and you can see how nature works, then that's like reverse engineering automatically, which means you've already done the math with the mathematician that is doing the physics. Okay? And if you understand what it means between invert or convert, which means, remember I talked about how it's already together? We don't got to deconstruct it in order to figure out how it works, because you're already experiencing how it works. Now, an example of that would be like when I was in La Poi Hoi. And how, when I was with Lay, who was a Lemurian, and I do miss her. She was just a beautiful spiritual being to hang out with and have a lot of fun. Basically observing things together and sort of, you know, you're on your radio set. You know, she worked in Air Force Communications as a supervisor, so you know she knows something about antennas. You know, a transceiver, a radio set. And so what happens is, and this actually is very painful for me, and why I understand I said to my grandmother, Karen Ann McDonald, Patty was a fixer. I can't do. If you go to look on Project Ascension and Patty Broussard was showing you all the things that she does, I do a lot of those things, but not the way that she does what she does. And then this will go back to when I was 4 years of age and I was experiencing eternal love through my heart and my soul. And then I mentioned how it is that any loss of energy in you, I'm going to experience in me, and I can do that within any planet chip. Actually, any galaxy. Right? Okay. So the way that some words are described, which can actually be inverted if it's experienced in an inverted way, which keeps the reverse flow of that experience with the magnets that you're running that induces that. Okay? Like an inductor or transducer. So the experience that is held in memory can be self-reinforced to experience it the way that it is mathematically and musically. So, for example, I don't use the word war or master in the same way in which that connotation is represented by the math in which it's experienced by the presenter who is experiencing it, and the way in which they are experiencing it, the way they do with their vibration or reverse magnetic polarity. Okay, so I've tried to qualify the language that I use because I've mentioned this is not my native tongue, because the math of this language, the music, okay, will never match up to the amount of energy that I'm experiencing that is impossible for me to communicate in a shorter waveform in which it's experienced how much I could share that is based on the amount of energy in which it's being held. If you can experience and translate that, right? It means like, oh, I want to make sure I get that out. I want to 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 get that out. You want to get it all out at once. So it could be experienced at once. Well, your magnets aren't that big. The amount of information that's being experienced all at once like that, my God. And Patty described that as your head would explode. And now you can understand when Ashadian talked about Metatron's fall. So I'm thinking, okay, why did I revisit this that prompted me to do this? And it had to do with the word that I was not going to use, but I'll choose to use it, but now I have to qualify it, right? So that those that are on the receiving end of this message understand the context and the intention of my communication. So when we talk about masters, or what we call ascended, now we're back to the word ascended. What does ascended to one person can mean ascended to another person. Therefore, the vibration and the frequency through which it's experienced is not going to be the same. And that's why the language and the communication between communicators and receivers is distorted, because the language is distorted. Okay, now we're back to the letters, and letters are numbers. That's the math, that's the music. Okay, so what it means is that if you're a master, and you know that it began with the primal sound field, right? The first musician, the first wave. The first wave is the God wave, which is the God speak. That's what I am. That's called the one. Okay, so you know that love is the law. It began with what love is. That's an infinite love vibration. Okay, so that means that a loving musician loves music. So the Holy Spirit of a Holy Father joined as one with Eve as Holy Mother. That's known as the Holy Grail, or the Grail cup. The cup from which we drink, right? The water, okay? The fluid. So you know why we drink and have fluids, and that gets into energy or love seeking the least amount of work, right? And that's why the money system, the energy harvesting system, was set up the way that it was, so that you have to work for them in order to get the energy back that was already your energy. I know. Which is inverted. So she mentioned the word called master, okay? And I didn't understand this necessarily, but my mother would, whenever I would write a letter to a friend when I was a little kid, she would put down there, Master Robert. And I'm going, master, huh? Yeah, you're the master of the house. Oh, like the master of arms? Is that like the master of arms in Congress? I know who the master of arms in Congress is. I've met one of them. right? Which was a Mr. Smith, you know, operating on behalf of, I call them API chatbots, which is an application program interface of what you're choosing to both program and experience at the same moment. And now you get into the matrix of the time matrix and the way that it works and the stuff that Asha Diane was presenting with the Guardian materials. Okay? Which deals with what an ascended master is. Okay? And now you would understand why the magnets work the way that they do and what we call magnetic tape delay. So the delay, the difference in the speed is the learning. What you're learning as a result of the result that's being experienced with the opening and closing of the magnet, speed. So I've shared this before when it comes to the speed, the learning speed differential between machines that are learning, that are connected to other machines, how fast they're learning, okay, through each other, what they become aware of. Now you get into volume, gain of function, right, on how fast we're learning. And that's the magnetic torque speed. So the idea would be, right, like sharing my experiences when I realize I'm exposed to an enormous amount of contamination, an oxygen level that is below normal, okay? And everything that we have cataloged here, cathode ray tube, cataloged, the way that they use the word cataloged, which is everything that is held in memory by this particular QI that's running. And it's running by virtue of all the software that is here, that is experiencing itself by virtue of the libraries that are cross-indexing all the other libraries that are running simultaneously within simulations, within simulations, within simulations, which are being mapped and graphed using log tables with the water distribution tables because of the importance of H2O. Right? So an ascended master, the way that I experience it, being a musician, is self-tuning. So you're self-tuning radio star. Yes. Okay, so what it means is if you've mastered it, it means that you should be able to go into any galaxy, any star system, and retune it naturally. Okay. Without needing a technology, machine-driven consciousness transportation system, because you're the one. It means your presence, your consciousness presence as an oversoul can be everywhere because it began with the one. The one is the master musician of all time. Okay? That means that you naturally, without even having to think about it, is going to retune back to the one, which is the love vibration, which is an infinite love vibration, which means you're experiencing it without having to think about it. That kicks on your creation mode, your creative ability. Now your creative ability is on fire, lit. Now the speed at which you're experiencing what it is that you are in energy has accelerated in what we call its intensity, which means now the intensity of your star is burning so hot that you realize what becomes necessary naturally, which is to give it away at a higher rate of speed. Because you don't want to hold on to that much energy. Because now you want everything that isn't experiencing that energy to experience that energy. That's what it feels like to be the one. In other words, everything that is alive and living and conscious and aware of itself is experiencing the one. They're experiencing being loved by the one. The point of origin. And that's why when I lit myself on